All right, good morning, everyone. Today is the Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, March 1st, 2023 at 8 a.m. in the Town Hall Green Room. Can we all stand for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2, visitors. Are there any visitors that would like to be recognized at this time? Any visitors? Hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the minutes for the February 15th, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Item number 4, appointments and reappointments. I will not badger the last name. Are you John?
Yes.
How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Hefferly.
Hefferly, all right. So John Hefferly, unaffiliated, is up for the Public Works Commission alternate seat until June 30th, 2023. Before we begin, does anybody have any questions for John? We all have his information. No? Look at that. See how easy this is?
Yeah, it's great.
Excellent.
I wish all my meetings were like this.
Yeah, we do too. All right, if there's no conversation or comments, then we have a motion to approve.
So move.
A second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you, and congratulations, John, and thank you for stepping forward. Item number 5 is the charter revision discussion. So we've had a couple meetings on this and had some discussions on it, so at this point, essentially what we're looking for is whether or not we're ready to kind of move forward as submitted, as the recommendations that come back from the Charter Revision Committee, and then the public hearing. There was a couple items. So if we're good, we can move forward as submitted, or do we want to have further dialogue with the Charter Revision Committee? If there's anything else that the council wants to discuss with the committee.
So if you have recommendations, they would go back to the commission. The commission has its time to consider them. The commission can consider them. The commission can reject them. They would set the report, and the report would be final. Then you would have a thumbs up, thumbs down on the report. So this is your last chance if you have
Let's go around.
tweaks and adjustments to the document. Based on what was stated at the public hearing, one individual questioned or stated that in section 11-4, his take was that there was a statutory requirement which requires municipalities to look at their charters every 5 years. In consultation with the town attorney, that's actually incorrect. There is no statutory requirement. That is a local requirement. We added it when we did the last charter revision. This one is permissive and allows the council to do it, but it is not a mandate. And again, you are not mandated by statute. The other comment was relative to terms, which is section 3-3. I guess the take was that this was going to be confusing. Town Attorney's Office simply stated, just leave the original language as is in place. If that's clear and there's no confusion, just go with what you got, because everybody's already locked into their 4-year terms at this point.
I did ask the council, and I'll ask them again, section 8-10, beginning with emergency management director, and going down through the next pages, 26, 27, 28. The directors of each of the departments, when hired, there used to be a search committee, and we all agreed that that wasn't necessary anymore. But I asked the council if maybe we should be able to meet these the final candidate that Carl chooses, since we're the ones hiring them. Just something to think about.
You're ratifying my selection.
Yeah, we're not hiring those individuals.
No, we're not.
Right.
Well,
You're ratifying the selection of the town manager.
Town manager does the hiring, not us. He brings forth the people that he would vet.
Yeah,
Okay,
so Carl, you
again.
said the council would be ratifying your decision?
Correct.
Explicitly or implicitly? Is there an action that that person comes before the council?
I give you the background of the individual that's the final candidate, present you information that I have on them, and then the council takes an action to say yes.
So that the only difference is you'd give us paper to look at versus you want to see the person in person?
Or I'm asking if we should, yes. Now that we're seeing the person, the people who are being appointed to various commissions and boards, it doesn't seem like much of a stretch to meet the person
Yeah.
who's going to be.
I think that's a huge stretch, because these are appointed by the council. These are individuals that we're hiring to be employees. And second of all, the reason we kind of have a town manager is so we take the politics out of it, because if you bring a person in front of 7 people, it will be politically motivated. But
Oh, I hate to think that.
Well, okay, everybody hates to think it, but that's still out there.
I don't even know
That
their
exists.
politics.
How about-
That's why we have a town manager, is to vet and to bring people forth to the council so that we then can sit there and say, we agree or we don't agree. Quite honestly, hiring a town manager who, this is his profession, kind of knows the fit, knows the dynamics of how things work. I personally, I mean, I'd have a very big issue saying, no, I don't like that person, give me somebody else. I would put my trust in the town manager, not just being Carl, any town manager who runs this town going forward. Appointed positions, I feel are definitely a little bit different. Yes, we have them coming here, but as far as some of the other positions, I think it's just going down a road that we don't necessarily need to be involved in. But that's just my opinion.
So we're involved for the ratification anyways.
We're involved, yes, at the end.
And we're not prohibited from seeing the person if we want to, but you wouldn't be required to present the person.
Correct.
That seems like the logical way to go.
You open the door, if you're going to be interviewing them, to council will have to stick to prescribed questions to avoid employment liability issues. I think that's part of the original issue of why this cropped up. There were some experiences under the old form of government with the last first selectman where committees were going where they shouldn't have been going.
Yeah, I could see that. I see what you're saying.
I was thinking less of a questioning and negating, more of a small presentation, but I will go with the council. I'm only bringing it up to you guys and girls. No girl here. It's up to you.
So to restate, what I think we said is, Carl, you submit the information for ratification by the council. The council has the ability to not ratify, right?
Correct. So when I interview individuals, I thank them for their time and tell them that, the final decision will come after whatever the next council meeting that we line up in, so they don't know whether they are the finalist or not. I do what I have to do and then bring to the council who the successful candidate should be for appointment.
Seems good to me.
Okay.
I have 2. First one is, when we boosted that appropriation figure up to 600,000, which was a good move from 300, don't get me wrong. But based on what we're hearing for this last year or so, you can't buy anything for $600,000. So, I mean, I'd like to give the latitude maybe of going up a little bit. I guess we said it now at 5. I had talked to Tom, and I think I said I'd like to go up to at least 6, but Tom said he even thought, and I sort of agree with him, that possibly going to 7 or 750 is not exorbitant, because of the fact the way the economy is. I mean, when we go out to buy this new fire truck or whatever we're gonna buy here, any of these vehicles in the next couple of years, 500,000 might be a little low. So I just throw that out on the table for discussion. My second thing is, I still don't like the wordage about when the town council renews or whatever, the town managers. I would leave it that there's no stipulation that we can only do it for 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. Town council should agree to a contract with the town manager, period. I mean, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I'll use the recent example about the police chief. We found a good police chief. We found it necessary that we wanted to tie him up until he retired. So we went with 7 years on that police chief. So I just don't think any restrictions on the town council in the future, not that I'll be here around or anything, but in the future, to put any handcuffs or shackles on a town council in regards to how long they want to hire a town manager. It just might be someplace down the line where instead of 5 years, you want to do 6 years. Who knows? Maybe Mr. Kilduff will hang around and he still continue to do a good job, and we can get him close to retirement and we could do the same thing. I just don't think the restriction is necessary.
I got a long time to go for retirement, Dennis.
I understand that. You're a young fellow, but
That's why he's leaving it open for you.
I'm just trying to say that to put any type of restriction, oh, we can only do it for 1 year, we only can do it for 3 years, we can only do it for 5 years, should be left up to the council. We hired a guy, that's probably our most primary, duty as a council, is to watch over the town manager. And so, just, again, I throw that out at you, I don't wanna throw this process of the charter revision extended, we have to go on other meetings and blah, 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 but I do think those two things deserve a little bit more consideration than what we had given them prior. I'll end it with that.
I think that the taxpayers might have trouble with some of those,
They might.
and they'll vote on it, right?
What's that?
They'll vote on it, the charter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that they might question too much power in too few hands. I'm just thinking that's what the taxpayers would.
That's a nice view.
With that said, I think the second one's harder. They might have more issue than the first one. I do think 300 was way too low. And, how many decisions did we make to say, I don't know, make it 300 because we can't do it higher? That shouldn't be really impacting your decision. We should, up to a limit, we should be making the decision on what the appropriate amount is. So, 600, 750, I like those numbers.
Good enough. Hank?
So on the appropriations, I agree that it should be raised. On the second one, on the town council one, if you think about the politics that Chris had mentioned earlier, your thoughts on that is, the council has the power to get rid of the manager at any time.
Right.
It's at will. So that solves that problem. So then why would you need a 5-year, your point, right? Why would you need an expiration date? And the only thing I can think of is a political issue, right? Where you didn't have enough power within the council to remove the manager because there was disagreement amongst them. But if it was automatic to re-up, there might be enough political power to not reinstate him. That's the only instance I could think of where that would occur, and I don't see that happening, but I was just trying to think of where it could occur. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, you're right.
Yeah, and I don't know if this addresses what your concern is, because I think someone at one of the charter review hearings that we had mentioned that if in fact we did want to get rid of this gentleman or any other person afterwards, man or woman, that the vote would have to be 5-2.
Well, there you go.
Rather than 4-3.
Yeah.
Because that way, that takes out that little business about, oh, yeah, okay, you got 4 Republicans and they don't like this guy, they're gonna get rid of him. You have to have across-the-board cooperation with everybody concerned.
So now with the expiration, you could get him out with 4-3, whereas if you eliminate the expiration, it takes 5-2.
Yeah, that would be part of it. That would be, yes, that would be part of, additional to that rule.
I mean, that's how the contract's written anyway. I mean, regardless, I mean, that's the term of, and the length of any town manager's contract, there's gonna be language in there that, that we have the right to remove.
Exactly.
I mean, so we're still protected. So if there's any issues that we feel that we have with the town manager, they can be removed.
And the
So that's
town
part of the
manager
language.
can also leave.
He can leave anytime he wants. We can give a town manager a 40-year contract. He can say, I don't like it here after 1 year, and say, I'm out of here.
There you go.
So it's both sides. It works both sides. So it's not like, it's just, we have all the control and we can determine, because obviously who would come here? If we say, we're going to tell you what we can do. I mean, it has to be a contract where there's negotiation on both sides. So if you're doing a contract Yeah, it's the same thing that fell in with the chief.
Yeah.
I mean, he came to us and said he wanted a specific term. There was backlash because we only did 3-year contracts. Well, there's no policy in town that we did 3-year contracts. It was just that that's what they did. And the fight here was, if we got somebody good, why would we only give them a 3-year contract? We want to commit to somebody who we feel is beneficial to our town. Let's commit to them. And let's not just say, hey, listen, it's only 3 years. Because again, and even on a town manager side, even 5 years, if as you go on, you want somebody to uproot their family. Because if you have somebody, that is out of state, say, and they're going to move here, that it's a big move. It's a big change. You want to commit to somebody that in that position. And again, do you make bad decisions sometimes? Yep. But again, we have the out, they have the out.
Well, isn't there, I forget, I know we talked about this when we were doing the contract, but is there some sort of severance? There is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not completely at will, like if we decide to get rid of him within the contract, there is a cost associated with that.
Exactly.
And that's a
there's
usual
a
and
lot.
standard business term. Any manager
Right.
would want to protect himself and his family in the event of a political whim that passes along the council.
Yes, and I'm just saying that is another reason for a term, if the term runs out, then it gets reevaluated, whereas if we're saying, hey, we give them a 9-year term, who cares? So we can get rid of them at any point, that's not necessarily totally face value, because if we get rid of them in year 4 of a 9-year contract, we have a cost associated with it.
Regardless
Get
of
rid
term,
them
yeah.
After a 2-year contract, we're still gonna pay the same cost.
Right.
We have to pay the same severance if it's built into his contract. Whether he's here 1 year, 4 years, 8 years.
Right, but I'm saying.
If we fire him,
If it comes up on 5 years, then we have nothing. Like, if he has a 5-year contract, it runs its term,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
but if we give him a 9-year contract.
Well, I'm
Yeah, I
not
mean,
talking
right, I
about
don't-
9
right.
years, Chris, I mean,
I don't-
let's exaggerate this.
At the-
this-
That's another factor.
Okay.
And I think at the end of the day, let's face it, I mean, I don't know, other than a recurring 1-year contract where basically it's just an open-ended contract and you just, they serve and then it goes year to year. I mean, the length of a contract, I think we'd be hard pressed to have somebody come in and say, I want a 10-year contract.
Right.
Because again, infancy stages of an initial contract. I agree, listen, 3-year contract, we were new to a town manager, that all worked out. At this point now, we are here. This isn't changing, it's not going away. We will have a town manager form of government for a year until the end of time. So, I think we need to be more flexible as to the next time we're out on a search, what are we gonna do? Maybe that person comes in and says, I do want a longer term. That's a decision that the council makes at that point as well. I mean, so this isn't, we still have the opportunity to make this decision down the road, but if we're saying it's open to term and conditions, I mean, the conditions that you put in a contract are pretty standard. I think it's mostly the length of that contract. But again, it's still a discussion that the council would have at any time to say, we like this guy, we want to commit, whatever term we want to him. And I think it's just leaving that open to that. And again, the severance thing, regardless, I think we all have outs. I mean, it protects both parties, so.
So how long is the contract now? Does the contract match the 5-year?
It's only 3 now.
It's only
now.
3, because
Because
that's
that
what
was
the
within the
charter
charter,
allows.
that was right.
Because that's what we started when, you remember that,
Yeah,
you were on it, eh? That's when we decided that,
So what we're
going to take a
proposing is to
chance.
change the charter, but not change the contract, right? So the charter would go to 5 years, but the contract's still 3.
His contract stays.
Well, I think the thing you have to remember
now,
too is
yeah.
the charter's only good for 5 years.
Right.
When
Why would we
when is-
why would we issue a contract that exceeds?
Right.
uh,
When does the contract expire?
You just signed it, what,
23.
23?
26?
This year?
Yeah, 26.
No, not 23. When did you use to?
This year we
Last
redid
year,
it.
wasn't it?
25.
25, I think.
25, you signed a 3-year contract in 2022. Right. So I mean, if we go back to, so basically, if people are comfortable with that, we can go back to the committee and say, we'd like you to look at these 2 items. Maybe a 750 threshold for appropriations, if people are comfortable with that, and then addressing the term.
There's a difference
Like I
between
said,
just-
I don't think we should offer contracts that exceed
Yeah.
this. This says 5, this is only good for 5 years.
The charter,
But we're,
the charter is in place until the council decides it's not in place. the language that's in here is that you may have a charter revision commission. You are not compelled to have a charter revision commission. The statement that was made at the last public hearing was inaccurate. There is no state statute that says it's only good for 5 years, you gotta look at it after every 5 years. That was a misread of something, but not what state statute is. So if the council says, no, we don't want to do a charter revision commission, this continues in place as is.
So the contract
Just
could be
keep the issues
well within the
separate.
charter. Just something to think about.
Just remember the
So what's
economics
before
of
the
5 years ago
council
versus
now is
5 years from now.
What are we
Yep.
going to recommend to the Charter Revision Commission to reconsider the appropriations and to remove the 5-year
Correct.
rule? So I'm with the appropriations, but I'm not with the removal of the 5-year rule.
Okay.
And I think the appropriations, we have to be careful of, the amount for taxpayers. They'll be concerned.
The appropriation,
Yeah, 750,000.
you think it's too high?
That's high. That's pretty high.
I feel that's high also. That's a lot of money to spend without any input.
There's
Well,
gonna
there's
be
still
input.
input. It's not like,
There's gonna be input, it's
The
just the
council still has
idea.
input.
As Chris said, this last year, when we were doing ARPA funds, the first thing we had to always look at, oh, we can't go over 300,000, can't go over 300,000.
Right, well,
Well,
there's,
what do you buy now, Carol, for
yeah,
$300,000?
but there's a vast difference between 300 and 750.
Right,
Yeah, there is.
okay, so we worry about the taxpayers. Well, the taxpayers in our town elect the town council. The town council is there as their threshold.
But they
and
also
their-
vote for the charter.
And we're the ones that are involved. I mean, the council is there to protect, and you're elected by the taxpayers. It should be, and again, so we're not saying that, hey, listen, if we put it at 750, we're going to 749 every time.
Right.
The council has the right to say, no, I don't think that's, I mean, with still discussion. I mean, there's still,
It's the difference between a town meeting and a referendum question.
right.
So up to here, it's 500. That's all town meeting activity. So whoever attends that town meeting will be giving their say and their vote. It just wouldn't be a referendum question with everybody voting on it.
Then who goes to the town meetings? I mean, we talk about the taxpayers all the time, but we have these meetings. Nobody shows.
that's it.
People have showed in the past, that is how capital projects were funded in the past, where things weren't done in front of the budget for everyone to vote on. It was done off to the side in a separate process, which we don't do anymore because it's not transparent.
I'm comfortable with 600, but the majority decides, so.
Chris?
I like, say 700, what a compromise.
I'm good for 7.
I'm good.
So bounce it back.
I'm good.
So that would have to go back to Charter Vision Commission.
Yeah,
They would make the decision.
right. This is the recommendation from the council to them.
You would be making a recommendation, and they would make the final decision to say, this is where we want it. They could leave it at 500, they could take your advice, they could do whatever they want to do at that point. Then the report will become final, filed with the town clerk, and if you look at the schedule that's in the agenda packet, in a month, the report becomes final. Town council has to act to approve or reject. That's it. The
So
amendment.
this
that's
is it.
just one more time.
Yep,
Yeah.
with their final answers. So we'll make a recommendation for 700?
Yep.
What do we want to do on the term? Leave it as is, change it, have them look at it?
I'm fine with as is.
I like it as is.
Yeah, who knows
like
what
the
the
500,
economics
Chris?
is going to be 5 years from now.
That's about the contract.
I just put it out there, guys.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Look how upset
be
Dennis, look how
disappointed.
upset Dennis is now. Look at the poor guy, gotta go home. Tell the wife, look, they shot me down. So keep it at 5?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so the only thing we're bouncing back is 700,000 on an appropriations.
You can tell they got one of them.
yeah, right.
Okay, good?
500.
Okay, we will now move on to item number 6, which is the participation in the Regional Housing Committee. We talked about this at the last meeting. We got some information from Carl about it. Basically, at this point, we're just looking for council input as far as whether or not we do want to obviously participate in this. That's really all we're looking for.
So I've brought this up in my report twice. At the last meeting, I handed out what the recommendation was coming out of the Regional Housing Plan, which is a document that was put together by the Council of Governments. Towns are signing up to say, yes, they want to participate in the program, and will be ultimately picking someone to attend to represent them. As it stands right now, 10 of the towns in the region have all agreed to participate in the Regional Housing Committee. So Chester is in, Cromwell is in, Deep River is about to join, East Haddam is in, Essex is about to be in, Haddam is in, Killingworth is in, Middlefield is in, Old Lyme is in, and Old Saybrook are in. So those that have yet to make a decision are Clinton, Durham, East Hampton, Lyme, Middletown, Portland, and Westbrook. So it's really just an interest of whether you want to participate, yes, no, and then we can figure out who the appointee would be to represent the town afterwards.
It's an important issue.
So the committee as structured is really just more collecting information and then sharing information back out to municipalities, and that's the initial scope of work for the committee. Decisions would still be made at the local level, not at the regional level.
Participate?
Yes.
I think you should, yeah.
Okay. We will participate. All right, item number 7, Chairman's Report. I have nothing to report today. We will move on to the Town Manager's Report.
So you have my written report. I gave you a little bit of color on charter revision, which is, we've now moved beyond that. At the COG meeting, there was a discussion on early voting and what that may or may not look like. So it remains something that's in a state of flux, which I commented at one of our budget meetings. So we don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know who's going to be responsible for it. We don't know what department it will be in or out of. We don't know whether the state's going to put any money in it, but we're going to have early voting. So at some point in time, those issues will land and give us some greater direction. The comprehensive economic development strategy for the region it has extended its public comment period. Abby and I have taken a look at the draft. We have a number of comments because both of us have experience with SEDS documents, but RiverCog relied on someone else to represent Clinton, and there's some gaps that we can see. Abby compiled additional information for projects that would be eligible for funding under SEDS, which is a tool to get Federal Economic Development Administration money. They were relying on our former consulting planner to provide that information, and that was not passed along to anyone else. So we've now filled that gap as we go forward. Consulting town engineer, we did do some interviews for possible replacement of DTC, who has been serving as town engineer. We interviewed 3 firms, trying to come to terms with someone at present for whether they will continue with DTC or with someone move to a different firm. It's been an issue that's been hanging out for a while. Solid waste remains a topic of conversation. So Mira is trying to push back against the governor's bill. If you've read some news coverage, there's an awful lot of back and forth on the governor's bill regarding solid waste in terms of what's the right path to move forward. We're planning to have another regional meeting to discuss the viability of a regional solid waste authority for this area built around the hub of the Essex Transfer Station to pick up the void which will be left by Mira when they are currently on their timeline to collapse. So it becomes an important issue for us to determine where waste goes and what we're going to pay for the tip fee. Contract negotiations in the early stages with some bargaining units. So I've got total negotiations to be done for a replacement police contract and a replacement dispatcher contract. There's police pension negotiations have to go on. On top of that is wage reopeners for public works, clerical, and supervisors union. So that's 6 rounds of collective bargaining that have to be hammered out. ideally before the start of the new fiscal year, but that's a lot, and we'll see how it goes. So there'll be more to come on that. The Coastal Resiliency Committee, so I've got a name from Harbor Management, I've got a name from Planning and Zoning, I've got a name from Conservation, and I have a name from an individual representing Beach Community. So I still don't have a full slate from the different committees that are supposed to be putting forward names. I think it's in process in sustainability where they're looking at someone. So some of it's still waiting to come forward. I'll ultimately need a council name for who on the council wants to participate in that group as we go forward.
Is there a marina owner?
We don't have one identified yet. And then just as an additional follow-up, I had a meeting with Eversource this week. This is additional on top of information that you've already received that went in a prior agenda packet regarding their plans to conduct vegetation management underneath their transmission lines
You woke me up.
in their right-of-way. So this is not street tree trimming, this is trimming in proximity to their power lines. Their easements that they already have in place give them the ability to cut down non-conforming trees. So a non-conforming tree is apparently something that grows too tall and is at risk for falling onto the transmission lines. A conforming tree is something that is too short and would not pose a risk. So they have sent out notices to property owners advising them of what they're going to do, so the individual property owners are aware of this. Their easement gives them the ability to make the cuts. It was already negotiated whenever those easements were originally put in place. So the route is, the Clinton stretch of the route is in the packet also. The project will be starting in Wallingford. The line goes from Wallingford down to Branford. Once it reaches Branford, then it goes across the shoreline from Branford to Old Saybrook. So as you can see on the map, they will be coming through Madison and Killingworth before they get to Clinton. And then they will continue across Westbrook to Saybrook. You can see the roads that it will cross, or abutting roads that will be along their right-of-way as they go through and make the appropriate, in their mind, the appropriate cuts. So they've been, as I said, letters went out. They'll be doing door knocking to double check and confirm with folks and let them know what's happening. The schedule is the last page. As it was presented to me, they are still in some permitting stages. So the expectation would be anything that would happen in Clinton would be towards the latter end of that schedule, like a September, October timeframe. If there's any change in that, someone is supposed to reach out and let us know what the change in schedule is. That's it.
Questions?
Yeah. On the solid waste, you said that we're looking at something regional to replace Mira.
Yep.
So right now Connecticut exports all of its solid waste, right? There is no,
The vast majority of it. So the waste-to-energy plant in Hartford has been closed, and that's where our waste used to go. There is still a trash-to-energy plant in Preston, and there's one in Lisbon. So the current arrangement that Mira struck for waste that goes through the Essex transfer station, so for our garbage, it goes from Clinton transfer station to Essex, and it used to be packaged and go up to Hartford to the burn plant. So ours goes to the Preston burn plant. So ours is still going to trash to energy, but that's only for another 4 years. And then the contract that established that will go away. And that's sort of what Mira had negotiated when they shut down Hartford, that our waste, the Essex transfer station waste, would all go to trash to energy. Everything else would go
Ohio or something.
west, south, what have you. So it's trucked or trained out of the state of Connecticut. So the question is, does it make sense to create a regional waste authority? There are other waste authorities in the state beyond Mira. They were just sort of the biggest one to drive some of the decision-making around how municipal solid waste gets dealt with. The state's policy currently seems to be focused more on encouraging recycling than anything else. We could be very aggressive with recycling, but you're still going to have some component of solid waste that's going to have to go somewhere. So that piece of what you're going to manage is some of that conversation.
So the group would get together to work together to negotiate somebody to take the stuff to burn it or to just a place to go to get a better price. The larger the group, the better the leverage, right? So is it
Well,
9 towns?
the larger the group, the better leverage you have from a pricing standpoint, but there's sort of, at least as it relates to kind of the model that we're going to inherit, it's the stuff that flows into Essex. So how many of the towns that flow into Essex, where you've got a community of interest, can come together to have a negotiated agreement for how we want to handle waste, how we want to handle recycling. I think some of the recycling market changes have shown that single stream that we've done used to work when there was a market for recyclables because nobody really cared. Now it's a little bit more, we only want clean glass and we only want certain types of cardboard. So those would be policy decisions of what to do. How you handle food scraps is another one. That's something that's in vogue with DEEP. Not every town is doing something with food scraps. We've been in limbo for 3/4 of a year waiting for DEEP to issue a permit so that we can do food scraps. So I think there's a disconnect between perhaps the aspirations of legislation and what actually can be done. So if we stand up a regional solid waste authority, there's a financial consequence associated with how you operate and how you run that, what the negotiated rates are going to be to take materials, whether it's to a burn plant or package it up and send it west and south. So it's how you negotiate that and how you control where your waste goes.
So the next step for that formation of that regional group is a meeting of which somebody from Clinton is going to attend?
Yeah, so the CEOs have met once already to discuss concept. There's going to be another meeting with some folks from DEEP. They apparently have some grant dollars which could be used to help do some of the exploratory studies that would be necessary. It's really kind of a conversation of, do people want to get together, and does it make logical sense for us to do a block establishing solid waste policy, or I guess the current state model is you have 169 different garbage policies across the state and everybody does their own thing.
Who's going to represent Clinton in that?
So I've been representing because it's the CEOs. So the other manager is the manager for East Hampton because they send their waste to Essex. Then everyone else is the first selectman for the shoreline areas.
And I have one more question, sorry. That coastal regional one, that's, what towns are involved in that? Is that the 9 towns?
The coastal
Regional water?
Resilience.
the coastal resiliency. So that's part of a grant that we were part of. So it's Clinton, Westbrook, Old Saybrook, and Fenwick, which I guess is technically Saybrook. But so each one of those groups have their own seat at the table. So a grant was secured to write a regional coastal resiliency plan. But then there's an individual kind of boots on the ground, what are you going to do in your own town discussion that has to take place, and figure out what the policy is going to look like for what you do to respond to changes in water level, what you're going to do for increased incidence of storms, how are you going to protect critical assets, how are you going to protect cultural assets, things of that nature. So it's a wide-ranging conversation. And there's a consultant at the regional level that would provide input to help inform the local level.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
So sorry, just one comment. We'll need one representative for, coastal resiliency, one for housing. I'll volunteer for one or the other. Just putting that out there for the future.
Yeah, for housing, I want to see who the other appointees are, whether they're staff like a planner or whether it's someone else, and then give further conversation on that.
Anybody else?
I want to apologize for being late. I'm just having an off day here. But I'm wondering, was there a motion made already to move to adjust executive session and the Park and Rec Commission appointment? Can we switch can we switch Park and Rec appointment to number 11 and executive session to number 12 so that our candidates don't have to hang around through our executive session meeting and come back?
The executive session was related to that appointment because there's more than one person.
Oh, okay.
So that we had that
All right.
discussion that we would talk to them. So that's why that's first.
So why would we have the executive session meeting before
So we can
interviewing
talk to
them?
each candidate, so that we're not doing it in a, like, asking them questions right here. We felt it would be better if we were in executive
Okay.
session, so that.
I understand. Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, here and then we'll move on to item number 9, which is the council discussions. Anything to discuss?
I'd like to ask, Carl, if you have the time to talk to Todd. I was thinking about the paving. I was specifically thinking about the water company and the work they're doing. And they're about 3 miles worth of road west of Grove. And I'm wondering, is the water company going to be repaving those roads, or have they patched it and that's it? I'm just hoping to use their activity, because there's a lot of it, to offset the cost of our own paving. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? All right. Item number 10 is Town Council Committee Liaison Reports. Does anybody have anything to report today? Nothing? All right. Item number 11 is the executive session personnel pursuant. So at this point, we'll make a motion to go into executive session, invite Mary, Carl, and we'll start with Chris Williams.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Everybody else get out. All right, we're back from executive session, and we'll move on to item number 12, which is Park and Recreation Commission appointment for a term until 6/30/23. Do we have a motion to appoint an individual?
So moved, Chris Williams?
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? Thank you. Chris, you are the appointee to the Park and Rec Commission. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 13, which is motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.